Hello and welcome to a very special interview with politician author Pavan Varma for TheWire.in. In recent days, Pavan Varma has tweeted, written articles and commented, raising worrying and serious questions about the handling of the economy by the Modi government, as well as policies followed in Uttar Pradesh by Yogi Adityanath. He's also spoken about what he calls the deteriorating and damaging social mood of the country. These questions and these statements by Pavan Varma have raised two critical questions in return. Is he about to re-establish his political credentials and perhaps change their complexion? And more importantly, is he about to break his relationship with his party, the JDU, and his mentor, Nitish Kumar? With me to talk about these questions as well as his statements and also how he sees his future is Pavan Varma himself. Pavan Varma, in recent days, as I said in that introduction, you've publicly questioned Narendra Modi's handling of the economy. You've publicly questioned the policies Yogi Adityanath is following in UP. More importantly, you've spoken of the deteriorating and dangerous social mood of the country. And then, in a very interesting article for the Times of India, you've talked of, and I'm quoting you, the cumulative impact of demonetization, the consequences of a less than adequately planned and implemented GST, youth looking for jobs they cannot find, and farmers reeling under unrelenting agrarian distress. There are a lot of areas of disagreement or difference that you have with the BJP and the government, and yet they are your allies. Your party is part of the NDA. So what's the message you're sending out?
Let me clarify two things to you, Karan. First, today I am speaking to you in my personal capacity as a member of the JDU. I am doing this because for two of my tweets, the party disassociated itself and said it's my personal opinion. And I am explaining that to you. Let me say to you that the JDU as a party has an ideology. That ideology has been chiseled and developed over a period of time, and its best personification is Mr. Nitish Kumar himself. For the last several years, I have articulated that ideology and put it across. On every issue that you've mentioned, I have voiced what I believe must be the JDU's point of view, whether it is on the current situation in the economy, where corrective measures can be taken because there is obvious and verifiable economic distress being felt, whether on the social milieu, where there is, after especially the Kalburgi, Dabolkar, Pansare, Gauri Lankesh murders, a sense that if you disagree, you are under threat. These are issues which are important for the nation and are above party politics and need to be articulated irrespective of which coalition your party is a member of. And they have always been a concern of the JDU.
Now, as you said, you've been the party spokesman for 4 years. For 4 years, you've actually voiced and articulated in public Nitish Kumar's position. So when you talk about critical issues such as, for example, the economy or the mood of the country or the reluctance or failure or refusal of the Election Commission to announce dates for Gujarat, are you expressing concerns that Nitish Kumar shares? Have you discussed these with him, or did they take him by surprise?
I know Mr. Nitish Kumar's thinking in Delhi, for instance, on a public platform at the launch of a book by Mr. Chidambaram. He said from stage, he said on the stage that the implementation of the demonetization matter was a monumental management failure. He himself said it. So I am saying that the consequences of it, whatever may have been the intent behind the move, are being felt in a manner which is deleterious to the economy.
Absolutely. And Nitish Kumar, as you say, in February spoke out about the implementation of demonetization, but he hasn't as yet spoken out about the Election Commission's refusal to set a date for the Gujarat elections, which you spoke about. He hasn't spoken about the mood in the country, which you called deteriorating and dangerous. On those two issues, did you discuss your opinion with him?
I have been speaking for Mr. Nitish Kumar on the basis of my knowledge of his thinking and his ideology, and I can say to you with great humility, there are few people who know his ideological stand on issues better than I do. And therefore, when I have spoken on these issues, I am voicing what I believe to be his thinking and his ideology.
Well, it's very interesting when you say, when I speak on these issues, I'm voicing what I believe to be his thinking and his ideology. Then you're also suggesting that if he differs with you on these critical points, he's the one who shifted his position. You're reflecting what was his original true position.
Well, let me say to you now the example that you quoted, the Election Commission. My question was actually posed not to a party. It was posed to the Election Commission because we have always believed that institutions like the Election Commission must be seen to be impartial. And therefore, if the dates for the Gujarat elections have not been announced and the model code of conduct has not been imposed, my only query was that the Election Commission must provide credible answers.
Except that on that particular point, the Secretary General of your party, K.C. Tyagi, within hours of your tweet, actually issued a formal statement where he said the party does not approve, note that word, approve the views expressed by Shri Pavan Varma. Not just disagree, they don't approve of the views. Then he added, Shri Varma was not authorized to make such a statement, and he expressed views in his personal capacity, and he adds, this has nothing to do with the party's official line. He also says that they have full faith in the impartial functioning of the Election Commission.
That is the party's view. My understanding of the party's view is that institutions like the Election Commission need to be impartial. If the party has disassociated itself with my query to the Election Commission, merely asking for credible answers, the party will, and I will have a dialogue with them, explain to me what is it that I have asked which is wrong or incongruent with the JDU's ideology.
But let me take you back to what you said a moment ago. I have a firm faith, you said, that I articulate the views and thinking of Nitish Kumar. You've done that for 4 years. Now, if in this instance, Nitish Kumar doesn't agree with the questions you posed to the Election Commission, then what's the issue? Suddenly, you're his spokesman. He doesn't agree with how you're articulating his views. In fact, K.C. Tyagi has actually expressed very different views to yours. So who represents Nitish's thinking, or do we just not know?
I think that on why the party has, as you put it, disapproved of what I said, I need to have a dialogue with my own party and with the leader, whose opinions on these matters I know for a fact. In fact, I used to deal with the election.
But you can't know for a fact, because his spokesman in the shape of K.C. Tyagi said he doesn't approve, that these are not the party's official line, that you're only speaking for. So
it cannot be, and I will have a dialogue with my own party.
So K.C. Tyagi
it cannot be that the JDU is not concerned about the impartiality in the functioning of the Election Commission, which is the watchdog for elections of the world's largest democracy.
So in other words, K.C. Tyagi is articulating a position that you're saying, in effect, Nitish Kumar may not fully agree with.
I think that if the party is disapproving it, then the party must explain on what basis, on what ideological plank it is doing so. But that's a dialogue which is an internal matter which I'll have with the party. It does not for a moment whittle down my own sense of conviction that such questions need to be asked as a member of the JDU.
Let's move beyond the issue you raised about the Election Commission. Let's also for a moment concentrate on the fact that you raised questions about the social mood in the country, which you said was deteriorating and dangerous. You've raised questions about the handling of the economy. You've also raised issues to do with Yogi Adityanath's policies. Behind all of this, sometimes people get the feeling that maybe Pavan Varma is beginning, note my words, beginning to articulate that the alliance with the BJP that kept JDU in power in Bihar might have been a mistake, that perhaps the JDU shouldn't have joined the NDA. Have you got thoughts that go down that line?
I believe, Karan, and I'll be honest with you, a decision taken by the party to join the NDA was endorsed by the National Executive, of which I was a member. But I never interpreted that to mean that the party is subsumed within the BJP, that as a member of that coalition, it has no right to articulate its own point of view on matters which are absolutely central to its ideological plank. Let me give you an example. The Shiv Sena, for instance, is a member of the NDA. And far from even asking a question, it is openly critical of the BJP. Within an alliance, you can have questions being posed without fear that your ideology needs to be subsumed within the larger party.
You're saying a very important thing. You're saying, first of all, at the moment you get the feeling that the ideology of the JDU has been subsumed by the BJP.
I would never like that to happen.
But you fear it is happening.
I'm not saying I fear it, I say that it should not happen, and in that context alone must the JDU continue, even as a member of that coalition, to ask the right questions which it believes are relevant to its ideological position, which has been chiseled and crafted over a period of decades by Mr. Nitish Kumar himself.
And the second thing you've suggested is that the sort of relationship the Shiv Sena has with the BJP may be a more appropriate one for the JDU to have, so that you retain your identity and you can speak out on
I don't
issues.
believe that being openly critical within an alliance is necessary. But I believe every constituent of any coalition has the right to ask the questions which it believes to be relevant today in the context of either economics or politics or the social milieu. It is the fundamental right. When you become a member of a coalition, you've seen the UPA, you've seen the NDA. Parties retain their identity and their ideology and ask the right questions.
Your fear, if I can interpret what you're saying, is that at the moment the nature of the relationship with the BJP is such that the JDU could be in danger of losing its identity. That identity might get subsumed under the BJP's, and that's what worries and concerns you.
My hope is that with a leader like Nitish Kumar, even if he has become a member of the NDA, the JDU will continue to assert what it believes is right in terms of issues and matters which are of national concern.
Regardless of the fact that sometimes this might not be music to the ears of our ally, the BJP. That is irrelevant.
I think it is, because there is a framework of a dialogue even within coalition partners.
And different voices should be heard and must not be silenced.
I don't believe the BJP has attempted to silence it. My own party has disassociated itself from two of my tweets, which is a matter I need to discuss with my party. But for me, and let me just reiterate it in 10 seconds, for me, I voice that ideology which I understand to be that of the JDU and of Mr. Nitish Kumar, and I have said nothing which is contrary to it, for instance, on the economy.
Once again, you are re-emphasizing that you're voicing the ideology that you believe is the true ideology both of the JDU and Nitish Kumar. You are once again saying you believe your questions, your doubts, your fears, your concerns are really those of Nitish Kumar, and that KC Tyagi, you're then suggesting, is the person who's speaking out of turn and out of sync. That's what you're saying.
KC Tyagi, a colleague of mine, has spoken on whatever instructions he's received. But let me give you one example. When I said that the global hunger index and India's position at 100 out of 120, at the bottom literally, is a matter of concern, I was reflecting what has been JDU's ideology of growth with justice, Nyay ke saath vikas. In other words, the fruits of economic development must reach the poorest of the
I
poor.
will accept your position that you're reflecting the true ideology of JDU as well as Nitish Kumar. Obviously, I'll point out to the audience that KC Tyagi firmly disagrees. But when do you propose to sort out this matter directly with Nitish Kumar? Because he's the only one who can actually say, not just to you privately, but to the world in public, that actually Pavan Varma was expressing positions I share and agree with, that the disagreement expressed by KC Tyagi was perhaps KC Tyagi's own opinion, not mine. Well, when will Nitish Kumar make that clear? Because it's now incumbent on him.
There is a dialogue I will have with my own leader.
When?
As soon as possible.
But how soon as possible?
I think the moment he has the time, and we've already agreed that we should meet.
So you have already spoken to seek time?
Yes, of course.
And you
in fact, he asked me to come to Patna.
So you will be going to Patna to sort this out?
With great pleasure, I will. He's
One
my
other
leader.
thing.
Why wouldn't I talk to him?
One other thing, you've laid a lot of stress in your explanation on the need for people to be free to voice their differences and their opinions. That is democracy, after all. In that context, do you think it's right and fitting that Sharad Yadav, a former president of the JDU, a former parliamentary party leader of the JDU, because he now has differences over the alliance formed with the BJP, should be removed from the Rajya Sabha altogether?
I think that Mr. Sharad Yadav was given time to discuss these matters within the forum of the party.
And didn't take it up?
And didn't take it up, and therefore he crossed a Rubicon, a line, where he was acting in a matter which the party interpreted to be an act of indiscipline. And therefore, within the constitution of the party, that they have decided to take action against him within the rules of parliament.
But there you have no difference with what the party is doing to Sharad Yadav.
Certainly, the party has decided on a line, and Mr. Sharad Yadav, when given a chance to express his views within the right forum and invited to do so, did not commit but held a parallel rally.
So he crossed Rubicon and now he will pay a price for doing so.
If it is so decided by Parliament.
And therefore, the decision is left to Venkaiah Naidu. You don't believe you need to intercede with Nitish Kumar to say, please rethink the appeal made to Venkaiah Naidu to remove him from the Rajya Sabha.
I will not interfere in these matters.
One other thing, many people have said that the relationship between Pavan Varma and Nitish Kumar is a very close one. Not only have you been his spokesman, you've been his friend, and it's a rishta that goes beyond just political friendship. In that context, people say, it's difficult for Pavan to resign when the differences ideologically or in views and positions and policies between him and Nitish grow large. It may be easier for Pavan to provoke Nitish through tweets and interviews to expel him.
I am not provoking anyone, Karan, and let me speak to you as honestly. I have great affection and personal respect and even gratitude to Mr. Nitish Kumar. But I believe that Mr. Nitish Kumar has an ideology, a position, a vichardhara, as they say in Hindi, which has evolved over a period of time. And in order to continue to voice it, I believe is important for the JDU itself.
But tell me this, if when you meet Nitish Kumar in Patna, you discover that actually your understanding of his views, thinking and ideology is mistaken, that somehow KC Tyagi is more accurately reflecting him, will you then leave the party, or will you allow your views to be subsumed out of a sense of loyalty or affection?
I think I can't answer a hypothetical question.
It may not be hypothetical very soon.
No, it will depend on whether Mr. Nitish Kumar and I are in agreement on matters that pertain to the very essence of what the JDU stands for.
And those are clearly to do with matters such as the social mood of the country, such as the fairness of elections in Gujarat, such as the handling of the economy and the impact on the poor, just to name those three. And if on those issues Nitish's views are different to yours, will you stay or will you leave the JDU?
I think, as I said, I cannot preempt the answer until I have first had a discussion with Mr. Nitish Kumar. My own view is that as a person who has really stood by ideology and his own thought processes, the discussion may well be where he understands where I am coming from.
And therefore will accept the need to part ways or accept the need to change his views to keep you there?
Let me reiterate to you. Right now, I am a member of the JDU and I work for Mr. Nitish Kumar, but within that framework, in the democratic milieu of any political party, there can be, on occasion, differences of interpretation and opinion. I am free to voice them, but I am subject to his final decision. And that dialogue needs to take place. Right now, it hasn't, but we hope that it will soon.
But you're still leaving open the question, what happens if you discover on critical issues your views differ from Nitish Kumar's, that Nitish actually is closer to KC Tyagi? Then what happens?
I think that Mr. Nitish Kumar has the freedom to decide whether he wishes to retain me in the party in the positions that I hold or not.
You leave it to him. You leave it to him.
He is the president of the party, but I will continue to believe till my last day that Mr. Nitish Kumar and what I have said on these issues of the economy, etc., are those that reflect JDU's ideology.
I want to talk to you about some of the issues you've raised a little bit more in detail, but let me wrap up this section by simply saying you're giving me the impression that you will leave it to Nitish to decide whether your views, if they differ from his, can still allow you to remain in the party, or whether Nitish feels the views are so different, he needs to ask you to resign or expel you. That is a decision you're suggesting you leave to him.
He's the national president.
You're not going to take the initiative.
He is the national president. He must take the initiative.
All right. Let's then come to some of the key issues you've raised, and I'll begin with your concern that the Election Commission needs to give credible reasons for not announcing the date of the Gujarat election. But the Election Commission has. They've gone public to say that the dates were not announced because the Gujarat government requested more time, which they needed for flood relief, rehabilitation and management. Why is that not a credible explanation?
If they have provided a credible explanation, that's all I asked for. But
they've gone public with it.
But they've gone public with it after my tweet, as I saw it today. But the several chief election commissioners have said that even after the model code of conduct kicks in, flood relief and such like measures are allowed within that code.
So this is not an adequate explanation.
So this
then?
is not an adequate explanation. Give me one instance, Karan, where elections to assemblies that are happening in different states within a period of 6 months. When was the last time when two different dates
Well,
were
in the
used?
case of Gujarat 2002, but the explanation is that in 2002, the Chief Minister called early elections and they happened 3 to 4 months early, which is why Himachal and Gujarat dates were announced differently. But let me ask you a second question, because people say that this is an instance where the government, the Modi government, has put pressure on the Election Commission not to announce the dates of the Gujarat elections so that Mr. Modi's visit to Gujarat this week and next week can take place without the restraints of the Model Code of Conduct. Do you share that suspicion or that fear?
If there is even remotely such a perception, it is incumbent upon the Election Commission to set these apprehensions aside and make the position clear. Listen, we live in a democracy. The Election Commission is the arbiter of this democracy. And if the perception is that there are not adequately convincing reasons why it has taken a stand, in the case of Himachal Pradesh and Gujarat, the Election Commission must explain. I'll tell you one thing, Karan. Democracy is not about the ritual of voting only. Democracy is about the strength of institutions. And the moment there is a perception, even if it's wrong, that there could be extraneous reasons operating in any manner, it is in the interest of all political parties, including the JDU, to assert the fact that the Election Commission must fulfill completely its constitutional mandate.
In fact, in your tweet you said, and I'm quoting you, the EC must not only be impartial but seen to be so. In this instance, it's clearly not seen to be so. Worse still, damaging questions are being asked not just by individuals like you and me, but by former election commissioners like Qureshi and Krishnamurthy. So has this episode damaged the credibility and integrity of the Election Commission?
I hope not, but if no adequate answers are coming, the questions will continue to be asked and it will damage. I'll tell you one thing. What was the reaction of Mr. Rupani, the Chief Minister of Gujarat? He said that in 2012, the Election Commission was helpful to Congress. Even if that may...
That's, by the way, casting further aspersions on credibility.
Even if that may be true, if one wrong is done, then do you justify it now by saying that because it was done in the past, this is being done? This kind of a dialogue casts a very poor impression on the Election Commission.
And this sort of argument is why you firmly believe that Nitish will share your doubts and concerns, and KC Tyagi, in claiming that you're speaking for yourself, you don't have the authority, and this is not the party's line, is actually wrong.
I'm actually completely mystified why the party has disassociated itself with a sentiment which only asks the Election Commission to provide credible answers for a decision it's taken.
Let's come to a second issue you raised, because again it's one that matters deeply to the Indian people. It's to do with the conduct of the economy by Mr. Jaitley, the finance minister, and of course Mr. Modi, the prime minister, because everything happens only with his concurrence and permission. Now, in your Times of India article, as I said, you spoke about the cumulative impact of demonetization, the consequences of a less than adequately planned and implemented GST, youth looking for jobs they cannot find, farmers reeling under unrelenting agrarian distress. And by the way, these are four concerns the government doesn't talk about at all. But more importantly, in a tweet referring to the Global Hunger Index where India's position had slipped, you asked, who is the fastest growing economy working for? Again, it's a question the government never asks. I get the impression that on the economy, you have serious, if not fundamental, issues of concern, maybe even difference with the government.
I believe that when I raise these issues, they are not only about differences, they are about the actual pain and what the citizens are going through now, which is verifiable. No one, government statistics reveal that there's been a drop in the GDP growth as a result of demonetization. The fact of agrarian distress has been verified and recorded. The fact that jobs are not being created in adequate numbers is a matter which can be ascertained.
Except there, Amit Shah not so long ago, 2 or 3 months ago, said famously that 7 to 8 crores have been created, jobs that is to say, in the unorganized sector. You don't accept that?
I don't believe so, because I think that the Mudra scheme, which sort of gave loans for people to set up, an evaluation needs to be done about its efficacy and the kind of jobs it's created. Otherwise, you go out of the studio and talk to the young. In fact, jobs are people are losing jobs.
So you're saying the economy is in deep distress and the government, a bit like the proverbial ostrich, is hiding its head in the sand?
I think that everything is not black and white. There are some pluses that the economy has achieved, but there are some downsides which the government must take cognizance of and take corrective measures.
But you say the government must take cognizance of, the government must take corrective measures, but not so long ago, Amit Shah said that the small slip in GDP growth was just technical, his exact words. And shortly thereafter, Narendra Modi in one of his speeches said that in fact he was supremely confident that before the end of the financial year, growth would jump to 7.7%, which by the way is a whole 2% more than the present known figure of 5.7. Do you share the confidence of those two gentlemen, or do you say this is unwarranted?
Governments justify economic policy. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi's confidence that these are transitional teething problems and the economy will ultimately do much better is something that I can understand a Prime Minister explaining to his people. At the same time, when I raised the question, and you just mentioned it, on the global hunger index, asking for whom is the economy working? If India, with an economy which is growing at this rate, has the largest number of people in the world going to bed hungry, 194 million by the global hunger index, then obviously the dividends of economic growth have to reach the people who need them most.
You are probably absolutely correct. I'm not presuming to judge or comment on the statement you've made, but I'm going to point something else out to you, that what you're saying says that the economy is not working in the interest of the poor. This undermines Mr. Modi's claim that this is a government that has done more for the poor than any other. You're actually saying that if 194 million are going to bed hungry, and by the way, just 24 hours ago it was reported by NDTV that a child in Jharkhand had died of starvation because the family couldn't get their ration cards because their ration card hadn't been linked to Aadhaar and so it was rejected. You're saying, far from Mr. Modi's claim being true, that the government is working with the poor in mind, the poor are the ones who are suffering.
Let me give you an example and answer a very short one. For a long time, the government kept saying that the GST is working well. Then there was criticism of the fact that it is not working in a manner that it was planned to. The government came up with corrective measures, at least some of them, which provided relief. No. In other words, if people don't raise issues which are of concern to the common person, are we living in a scenario where what the government says is the gospel truth and no one has the right to ask a question?
And you're saying something else as well, although you may be saying it tongue-in-cheek, you're actually doing the government a favor by raising these issues, by drawing their attention to the lapses and to the concerns about the poor who may be ignored, because that's the only way correction will happen. This voicing of questions by you is in the government's interest. Don't see it as dissent or opposition.
In fact, any helpful and constructive coalition partner should be doing this.
Let's come then to Yogi Adityanath's grand plan, which he's spoken of with considerable pride, of building an enormous Ram statue on the banks of the Saryu in Ayodhya. In the article you wrote for the Times of India, you said that at a time of economic dislocation, what you called this religious card, what you also called this religious mobilization, will not meet the real needs of the people. In other words, the real needs of the people are material. Their material wants need to be satisfied. This is secondary.
I have studied Hinduism very closely. In fact, I have a book coming out on Adi Shankaracharya shortly. And you are familiar with my book on the middle class, on being Indian and so on and so forth. I believe in the Hindu worldview, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Arth, the pursuit of material well-being, has got philosophical validity and acceptance.
In fact, today, in your article in the Times of India, you say it's more important than the others.
When Kautilya was asked, one of the greatest minds India has produced, he said that. The Ramayana says it. Thiruvalluvar says it. I can quote chapter and verse where people say that and secondly, and this is very important.
Before you get to the second, I'm just teasing out the point you're making, that in fact you're saying, even through your understanding of Hindu philosophy, which is second to none, that actually the Yogi government's priorities are wrong. The material welfare concerns of the people should take priority over building a glorious Ram statue.
I say build a glorious Ram statue. Ram is Maryada Purushottam, a beloved deity. Build the statue. But I believe that using religion as a means to polarize people for short-term electoral gain, if that is the purpose, is wrong. In other words, both the Mandir and the Ram temple need to be built if the Supreme Court or by mutual agreement they agree.
But don't use them for political
No,
purposes to polarize.
Because this has been the JDU's position constantly.
Except that most people believe that the BJP's position, probably more so now than under Atal Bihari Vajpayee, is to use the Ram Mandir and the Ram statue as a way of polarizing, possibly because the economic benefits they promised have not happened, and therefore the only way they can now guarantee themselves of people's support is to whip up Hindu emotion, and that means separating and polarizing Hindus from non-Hindus, primarily Muslims. What you say should never be done, many believe could be the actual core of what the BJP is trying to do, even if they don't admit it.
In fact, again, as a helpful coalition partner, that was my advice to the BJP and to Mr. Yogi Adityanath. Please bear in mind the fact that in moments of relative economic distress, playing upon the religious card which has been played in the past, if that is indeed your purpose, is likely to have diminishing results, because within the Hindu worldview, you go to Maryada Purushottam Ram as the epitome of rectitude for worshipping an ideal human, ideal God, not for electoral gain.
I'm going to bring back Nitish Kumar at this point once again, because he, more than anyone else, as a socialist, as a Loyalite, would say, you should never use religion for political purposes, and you should never seek to polarize people for electoral gain. Yes. And now when it's apparent to many, although it's not admitted by the BJP, but it's apparent to many that this is precisely what they're trying to do, whether with the Ram Mandir or whether with the Ram statue, surely Nitish Kumar would side with you and your advice in that Times of India article rather than disagree with you. You're voicing what you believe to be his thoughts and what we all think was his position.
I have not the slightest doubt that Mr. Nitish Kumar agrees with this viewpoint, which is his actually.
But he's worryingly silent even if he does agree. He won't say so.
That is his choice. As far as I am concerned, I am absolutely certain that Mr. Nitish Kumar will not approve of religion being used as a divisive card.
But we have a very
for electoral gain.
We have a very interesting situation where his spokesman, or a man who was his spokesman, is courageous enough to be outspoken, even if it is at the cost of upsetting the BJP. But Nitish Kumar himself is so concerned about keeping the BJP on side and not annoying Mr. Modi that he's preferred silence. Silence to the extent that people now question whether Nitish has changed his position and we misunderstood the original Nitish.
Let me tell you that I don't believe it's the case. At the National Council meeting which was held recently in Patna, Mr. Nitish Kumar in his speech to all the party cadres said, nobody needs to teach me a lesson on secularism. Secularism is the pillar of the JDU.
Well, people will say, let's hope. People will say, let's hope Nitish stands by that, and Pavan is correct in saying, I still interpret him accurately, and not that KC Tyagi is now becoming a more true reflection of Nitish's thinking. But let me then come to the last concern that you've spoken out about. It was at Kasoli at the Literary Festival just a couple of weeks ago, where you spoke about the deteriorating and you added dangerous social mood of the country. And then you had a very important, interesting sentence. You said, Khushwant would have been shot dead at his doorstep merely for writing what he did.
Could have.
Could have.
I believe that the foundations of Indian civilization are dialogue, debate, and the freedom to dissent. I told you I'm writing a book on Shankaracharya. The whole dialogue is carried out through a Shastrarth, not by violence, not by hatred.
But today, people believe that this government doesn't like the right to dissent. A BJP MP has publicly said that if he questions Mr. Modi at parliamentary party meetings, he's shut up, he doesn't get an answer, although admittedly he did recant thereafter. Journalists are convinced that ministers don't give interviews because they don't like being questioned. Quite often spokesmen don't even turn up in channels for discussions because they don't like being questioned. Dissent doesn't seem to be acceptable or even permitted. So you're actually taking a position that your ally fundamentally disagrees with.
I cannot say that the BJP is against dialogue or dissent, but if the milieu in the country is whipped up to create a situation where anyone who doesn't agree with the dominant view of the ruling party must be either ignored, marginalized, silenced or set aside, it's wrong. It's wrong. It's against every tenet of Indian civilization.
I presume when you raise concerns about the social mood of the country, you have things in mind like the beef ban, the behavior of Gaur Rakshaks, the love jihad campaigns that are happening in South India and happened earlier in North India, as well as the fact that today many people believe that if you refuse to say Bharat Mata Ki Jai, you're not patriotic, you're not nationalist. That this is a symbol or a litmus test of patriotism. On all these issues, the Prime Minister has deliberately, consciously kept silent. Now, some people say he doesn't have to speak on every issue, there's no need for him to do so. Others say his silence is either permitting, worse still, encouraging this mood. Where do you, and now I'll deliberately say, where does Nitish stand? Because you still claim to be the true reflection of his views. Where do the two of you stand on this?
I think that the Prime Minister should intervene far more actively, as he has done in the past in some statements, of trying to rein in, curb in the lumpen elements who believe that they have the right to take the law into their own hands. He has said earlier that Gaurakshaks are actually unsocial element, criminals who are masquerading as protectors of Hinduism.
But the Gaurakshak violence continues despite what he said, and he's done nothing to stop it.
And that should worry the Prime Minister. That should worry the BJP.
So
that should worry its coalition partners.
So he should go beyond rhetoric to action to ensure it stops.
I think that action needs to be taken, without a doubt. Because I am saying to you again and again and again, India is a civilization which is based on the freedom to dissent and on dialogue and debate, Shastrarth, not violence and hatred in the foundation.
On the Gaurakshak point, that action needs to be taken by the Prime Minister, as you said. Does Nitish agree with you?
I'm sure Mr. Nitish Kumar has condemned people who take law into their own hands. I tell you one thing, they are devaluing Hinduism by doing so, by resorting to violence, by beating up people without enough evidence.
And therefore, you're also saying by implication the Prime Minister's silence when he should be speaking out is also devaluing Hinduism.
I think the Prime Minister has spoken but probably needs to speak much more because so much is at stake.
One last question, and it's in this...
And I think I have a right as a coalition partner, in my personal capacity as a member of the JDU, to suggest that to him.
One last question in this very context of the mood changing and deteriorating and becoming dangerous. Last month in September, this website, thewire.in, revealed to the world that in fact loaded on the MEA website was a book called Integral Humanism, which claims to be an account of the life of Deen Dayal Upadhyay, who the BJP reveres, but then goes on to say, and this is very important, that the BJP is the only political alternative in the country. And secondly, it says Hindu thought is Bharatiya thought. In fact, it says Hindus are the only ones capable of spiritual thought. Do you think the MEA should get involved in this sort of book?
First of all, the bureaucracy must be apolitical. I believe that fundamentally. It's part of our constitution.
Are they today or not?
Now, I haven't seen the book. I don't know whether they are quoting Deen Dayal Upadhyay or whether they are saying it as an official statement from the ministry itself. If it's the latter, it's wrong.
Should they even be promoting a book by Deen Dayal Upadhyay?
Yes, I believe there is nothing wrong in having a book on Deen Dayal Upadhyay because, among other thinkers, his philosophy of integral humanism, as he articulated, was one of the strands that went into the making of modern India.
So your position as a former diplomat, and I'll remind the audience that you've been a diplomat for most of your life before you became a politician, your position is that there is nothing wrong in the MEA promoting a book on Deen Dayal Upadhyay, provided they similarly promote views on other people as well. But endorsing those views would be wrong.
I completely believe that because the bureaucracy has to be apolitical, and especially if they say that one political party is the only party that can rule India, I believe it's unprecedented, it's also wrong.
Well,
but I'm not sure, I have not read the book.
Well, it's very interesting that you say the belief that only one party can rule India is not just unprecedented, it's wrong, because one of the firmest convictions of the Prime Minister is to create what he calls Congress Mukt Bharat. In a democracy, is it fitting for the Prime Minister to try and eliminate the largest opposition party?
No, I don't believe it should be seen in terms of elimination. Within politics, which in a competitive democracy, you say that a particular party whom we oppose, we are trying to see that its presence is wiped out. presence is wiped out must be seen metaphorically in electoral terms. I think that is how it should be understood. Mr. Nitish Kumar had earlier said we want a Sangh-Mukt Bharat. Now, that was a statement made in a political framework.
So this is metaphorical, not literal.
I believe so strongly.
All right, Pavan Varma, let's leave it there. I'm extremely grateful to you for the candor with which you've spoken out. You have, of course, repeatedly said that you believe that you're still representing the true thinking and ideology of Nitish Kumar, that K.C. Tyagi's intervention doesn't reflect Nitish Kumar's real thinking. That, of course, is something we still have to find out.
Why K.C. Tyagi said, I would like to understand more from my own party.
Absolutely. But the key question that remains unanswered, and it is perhaps up to Nitish Kumar to answer it, is does Pavan Varma, who's been his spokesman for 4 years, still reflect his true thinking? Or has Nitish moved away from what Pavan insists was Nitish's original true position? That is a question only Nitish can answer, but I'm deeply grateful to you for this interview.
Thank you, Karan.